Welcome back to the Nursing Now podcast. My name is Janelle McSwiggan and I'm your host. This week we're going to be talking about self-care for healthcare workers and prioritizing mental health and wellness for nurses that are still at the bedside. Maybe you haven't quite decided to transition, or maybe you're still at the bedside for a reduced role and you're just not quite vibing. Unfortunately, mental health issues are very prevalent for nurses and healthcare workers. We are just living in a high stakes, high stress environment, and we really don't have the resources around us for us to excel at our current roles. Over 62% of nurses will experience burnout rates, which is wild. That's almost 3/4 of all nurses. We have one of the highest burnout rates of any other profession. And the higher your acuity, the more likely you are to have burnout. So critical care nurses are the biggest specialty that have burnout rates. So there's a direct correlation between the acuity of your patient and your likelihood to experience burnout. 65% of nurses will experience anxiety at one point, especially generalized anxiety and long-term anxiety, and 32% will experience depression. Now, these rates of burnout, anxiety, and depression, they're all on the rise in comparison to a decade before, which is really a bummer to see. And it really drives home the importance of self-care and nurse advocacy, which will always be a center for this podcast. Not only is this podcast a safe space for all nurses, regardless of licensing, including other healthcare professionals, it will be a source for you to understand what your options are for advocacy and how you can make your workplace a safer area for you and your coworkers. And if you decide to leave, what your options are to better support your mental health. So we talk a lot about burnout, but we don't quite define what burnout is. I've heard it a lot from my coworkers, but I didn't really know what burnout was until I was asked to do a presentation for another podcast. So burnout is an occupational mental health condition. So that means that your job is causing this. So this is not your fault. You are not less of a nurse because of this. This is because of your work. You have done nothing. Burnout is an occupational mental health condition that is caused by prolonged workplace stress that has not been addressed. So your work is actually causing you mental illness, which is just absolutely heartbreaking that 62% of nurses experience it. This is more than half, and it's completely preventable. And it's not really spoken about on a widespread issue. We hear a lot about from the nurses talking about burning out, but we don't hear anything about administrators and what they're doing to support us. 62%, that's a lot. If it was 62% of nurses were becoming amputees because of unsafe working practices, something would be done. So I don't understand why our mental health is not being taken care of in the same way that our physical health would have been taken care of. I also don't understand why nurses are such a disposable career that we're not valued enough to be taken care of. OSHA actually states that you have a right to a safe workplace where you are free from harm. That includes mental health issues like burnout, which again is caused by your work. It's caused by your bosses. It's caused by your healthcare facility. It's caused by these overarching themes of the nursing shortage that just keeps getting worse, not having supplies, being overloaded on patients, having increasingly long med passes, all so the people above you can have a higher profit margin at your stake. They're playing with your mind, your livelihood, and your ability to cope and have a life outside of work just so that they can have a higher profit margin. Burnout greatly impacts not only your life at the bedside, but your ability to have a life outside of the bedside. So you're not only feeling these symptoms at work, you're feeling these symptoms in your free time. So it reduces your ability to have a work-life balance, to have a relationship with your friends, your family, to have hobbies, and to feel that spark that makes you you. Burnout robs you of so many things that make you the beautiful person that you are, which is why we really need to reel back on it. It is not up to us to solve every single workplace issue. We need to really bunt that back to the administrators. If I'm calling out, if I am using my sick days, if I'm using my vacation days, I do not have to find coverage. That is not me. That is not my job. That's my administrator's job. That is literally within their scope. It's not within my scope to find a replacement. And that's not abandoning my patient. That is my boss not accurately filling the floor with enough floaters to take that type of hit, which they should be able to do. It's poor planning on their part, and it's the fact that they don't want to allocate that budget to support people using their sick time. So there's a couple of different ways that you can recognize if you're starting to experience burnout, and there are different things that you can do. You really need to act early on with burnout. It doesn't get better, it just gets worse. And like I said, it really robs you of your free time, your ability to safely care for your patients, your happiness, and your life outside of work. So please, you do not have to live with burnout, and you're not alone. 62% of nurses have experienced this. I've experienced this, and it's why I left. A lot of this podcast will be talking about ways that you can support yourself if you feel like the bedside is no longer an option for you because of burnout. So if you're feeling overwhelmed every single day you go into work, if you're starting to feel emotional and physical exhaustion, and like the type of exhaustion where you sleep 8 hours and your body still aches, your eyes are dry, you just can't get out of this foggy mindset. You feel like every day you're just sinking and trying to catch up, and the world is moving at a faster pace and you just can't keep up. You might be burnt out. And there's actual physical manifestations of this too. It's not just mental and feeling exhausted and feeling stressed and feeling like you can't cope. You can have heart palpitations, you can have GI issues, and chronic pain. Does your neck always hurt? Does your back always hurt? My knees were going off every day. My feet ached. Another thing that you can recognize is reduced immune system. Are you sick all the time? That could be burnout. And think about the type of life that you're leading with that. We talk a lot about quality life of our patients, but what is the quality of life of a nurse who is exhausted with chronic pain, always sick, heart palpitation, GI upset? Don't you deserve better? Shouldn't you be happy and healthy and thriving? And shouldn't you be able to manage a stress load that is actually manageable? Because honestly, it's not about buckling down and doing what needs to be done, and I can just not take a break, and I can just not use the bathroom for 10 hours, and my patients come first. It's not about that. Burnt out nurses are not less nurses. They're nurses that are taken advantage of by people that don't care about their mental or physical health enough to cause them a health condition. If this was any other career path, you would quit. You would find another job. So what is it about nurses that need to stick it out and man it up and we can do it? You're a real nurse if you're working overnights and however many days in a row and you're picking up extra shifts. This has nothing to do with real nursing. I invite you to push back on that narrative of real nursing every step of the way. We do not need labels in this industry. If you have a valid nursing license, you are a real nurse. Mental health has nothing to do with it. You don't have to muscle through the pain anymore. You can find your burnout, anxiety, and depression are not things that you need to live with. I invite you to find other ways to supplement your income, to find happiness, and to reduce stress. Talk to your managers. Talk to the people in charge. And if they don't listen, talk louder. Make yourself heard. And if they really don't listen, find another job. You're worth more. You're valuable. And you're worthy of happiness. We're going to be transitioning into the importance of self-care, which can help you cope with some levels of stress. Like I said, at some point, the levee has to give. And self-care is not going to support your mental health if every single day you're walking into chaos and you just can't keep up. And your shifts are longer and longer and you're walking more miles and more miles every day and your fight or flight is just hopping off. If your stress is at a manageable level, there are self-care strategies that you can implement, and we're going to be going over some of them. Nurses, you need to take the time for you. I know that we are so focused on patient-centered care, but patient-centered care does not mean that nurses have to sacrifice every single aspect of their life for their patient. Patient-centered care is actually a model of care where the patient is the decision maker. And it was pivot away from provider or doctor-centered care, where the doctor made the decisions. We pivoted to patient-centered care because they had better treatment outcomes because the patients were making the decisions. So they decided what their goals were, what their medications were, what their treatments were. And we found that people were recovering better when they had a more active role in their care. Patient-centered care is more about the patient making their decisions. It's not about the patient being this over-encompassing aspect of the nurse's life where the nurse can't take a lunch break, the nurse can't use the restroom, the nurse can't take 5 minutes to herself, and the nurse can't use their vacation time. Patient-centered care does not mean that nurses have to sacrifice their well-being, their mental health, and their spark for their patients. You are still a human, and you need to take care of yourself as well. I think this also ties into the concept that nursing is a career, not a calling. I've seen time and time again that nursing is my calling. Nursing is my calling. I've been called to nursing. I push back on this. And I understand why people say that nursing is a calling because we all want to be fulfilled in our daily work. I think that's why a lot of people became nurses, right? We want to see a difference, a real difference in our patients. We want to heal. We want to see them make progress. And if they don't, we want to say that we tried everything we could to support them in their journey for that. We're nurses. We want to help. At the end of the day, we're not volunteers. We're career people. We work for this. It's not like the olden days where, like nuns were nurses and wards were nunneries. And that's all that they did. There's a transition away from that. So again, nursing is not a calling. It's a career. And you're a nurse. You're not a martyr. You're not supposed to be sacrificing yourself to the benefit of others. No other industry does this, so why are we doing this? We are workers. We get paid for our work. We are not doing this just for the goodness of our heart. Do we love this? Of course we do. Do we want to see people succeed? Of course we do. But does that mean that we are taken advantage of to the point where we are robbed of our youth, of our joy, of our spark? No. We have to put limits up. And this does not make us less of a nurse. This preserves us. And if anything, it makes us better nurses because we don't burn out. And we're there for our patients in the long run. Instead of burning out in 5 years, we can be a nurse for 20 years. So putting boundaries for you against management, the healthcare facility, and also against yourself, reminding yourself that you're a worker, not a saint, not a martyr, not someone that has to sacrifice their well-being, really benefits you and the healthcare model in the long term. So self-care is important for sustainable practice. We're putting ourselves first as nurses in self-care because we're making ourselves better nurses in the long run. And also, just because it's not this taboo thing for nurses to want to care for themselves. We spend so much time putting other people first, but we also have to remember that we're also people. And if we get overwhelmed, that's it. We have to deal with mental health issues that take us out and that sacrifice so much for us. So at the base of this, advocacy and self-care are going to be consistent themes throughout this podcast. and I'm going to be helping you figure out exactly how to navigate these uncharted territories. You can practice self-care in a bunch of different strategies, and it's going to look different for different people. So we're going to be going through a couple of different strategies, and you can decide what might work for you. So the first way that you can implement self-care is through meditation. Even like 5 minutes a day can really calm your mind. It increases your immune function. It helps with your heart and your blood pressure. The research behind meditation is just so profound. So if you're on the fence, I really invite you to look at medical journals and do your own evidence-based research, because it is very profound out there, and there's a lot of textbooks that actually support meditation. So what exactly is meditation? It's working on breath work, it's working on mindfulness, and it's working on just quieting the mind and living right in the moment and being aware of what's going on, so what your senses are. So what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? And quieting some of those anxious thoughts, some of those ruminating thoughts, maybe those obsessive thoughts from the day or from what's going to happen. And with time, you'll see an increase in your ability to control your thoughts and your emotions through that. So practice with this does make perfect. Some people like to meditate in the morning, at night, even in the shower. Some people like to do small pockets of time. I would do mindful chapstick breaks. So anytime that I use chapstick, I would take a moment and zen out. And that was really good for me because I use it a couple of times a day. I also really like implementing mindful meditation right before I go to bed. It's really helped me sleep, especially as an insomniac. And it's a really good way to kind of self-reflect. Another way I like to implement meditation is having a journal also, especially right before bed, and kind of jotting down some of those really ruminating thoughts that I feel like I need to vent, and I feel like it's all stuck in there. And a lot of the times as nurses, we can't talk about our day, we can't talk about our caseload, we can't talk about a lot of those moments that are really heartbreaking and really weigh on us. And I find that when I write it down, it's out. Maybe that's because I'm a writer, but journals are really helpful. Even just word vomiting streams of consciousness that I'll never read again. I really, really had a sense of validation after. And I feel like it goes with meditation and mindfulness, because it's bringing light to those issues, and then it's gone. It's out of my mind, and I can process and be away with it. Being aware of your emotions, being aware of your meditations, that's one way that you can practice self-care. Another way is having hobbies. I think nurses don't really take time for themselves. A lot of it is exhaustion after a long day, or maybe you're into picking up extra shifts, or your shifts are weird, or you're just tired, you want to sleep. It was a crazy shift. I invite you to consider hobbies as a way to really reinvigorate that spark. Figure out what you're into, what makes you happy. Reflect about earlier, before you became a nurse. What did you like to do? Were you into sports? Were you into writing, reading? I'm a hobby connoisseur. I crochet, I ski, I hike, I kayak, I camp, I stargaze with a telescope. Currently, I am in a circus gym, and I do aerial arts, contortion, and I'm going to be taking up juggling. I'm there for at least an hour and a half every single day, and sometimes I'm there for 3 hours. So hobbies have given me something to focus on, something to be excited about again. I get out all of that physical energy that I'm just kind of mad about from my day sometimes. I'm like, oh, I just need to work this out in the gym. But I'm also bored on a treadmill. That's not invigorating enough for me. So figure out what your hobby is, and then you'll have something to look forward to. And it can be just as simple as, crocheting on the couch, watching TV. Crocheting is also a form of mindfulness too. There have been studies that it's very calming for you. Even if you're not great at making something, start off with a scarf. It's just something to keep your mind going and something to look forward to. The next way you can practice self-care is through movement. So I did mention finding something that works for you. It doesn't have to be the traditional sense of going to a Planet Fitness every day. That never worked for me. Like I said, I'm a skier, I'm a kayaker, I'm a forager, so I like walking around looking for mushrooms and wintergreen that I can eat, and I'm also in the circus gym. None of those are traditional ways to move your body. It also doesn't have to be vigorous exercise. It can just be a walk outside in the fresh air. It could be walking around your house. It could be swimming outside. It could even be a morning stretch. Yoga is really invigorating, and yoga has a bunch of different subspecialties. It can be restorative, very peaceful. It can be stretching based, almost meditative, where you're really sinking into that stretch for like 3 minutes for each pose. Or it can kick your buns. It can be really, really active. It also has the deeply personal philosophy side of it. But figuring out how to just move a little bit more that's not shift based is really helpful for a lot of people. I know that it really brought my spark back when I had something else to think about and something else to strive for. When I joined my aerial gym, like I wanted to hit that new trick and I got really into it. And I also met a lot of new friends, which brings me to the next form of self-care. Have friends, have a support group, see them, reconnect with them. Make sure they're not all just nurses. While nurses are great and they're really my community, I do find that I get sucked sometimes into talking about just nurses. So I make sure that I'm friends with engineers, I'm friends with artists, I'm friends with circus people, I'm friends with people from all walks of life and all different ages, and they bring beautiful different perspectives to me whenever we hang out. And they also invite me to do different things. Like I said, we do camping, we do hiking trips, we do international ski trips. So the broader your friend group is, the broader your experiences are. So making sure that you have friends and family that you can connect with and see, and not only when you're sad, maintain those connections is a really important one. Another way you can practice self-care is through just having a pamper day. Treat yourself. I'm not really into this one, but I have a lot of friends that are really into this, and I would be a liar if I didn't say I love a good bubble bath. Pampering yourself just makes you feel good. So whether it's bath, using a new skin product, doing a total spa day, or sleeping in, lighting a candle, or getting a massage, make sure that you're reminding yourself that you're valuable, and that you deserve these pampers. And go slow, take it easy, push back with that, I gotta get to these med passes, that go, go, go mentality. Make sure you really slow down. It really calms your nervous system and it balances that shift talk that we're doing all day long. Pampering is another great way to bring awareness to yourself in a meditative way. Great way to read a book in that pampered mindset. Another way to practice self-care is travel. Get away, get out of the healthcare system. Like, even if it's like a near or far thing, go to your favorite restaurants. I do a lot of weekend trips, some cute antique stores from a couple of towns over, very local farms, farmers markets, that type of thing, bed and breakfast in the mountains, whatever is close to you. Figure out what's like an hour away, what's an hour and a half away, if there's any cute lodging, and go from there. It doesn't have to be this crazy international trip, or it could be. We travel usually twice a year internationally, and it's a great way to let loose with that. You can also do conferences to meet up with your other nurses. I do that a couple of times a year as well. Those are usually more local, so national or international. And you can see what other nurses are up to. And it's a great way to reconnect and really just bond over our profession. So if you're doing self-care for a busy schedule, it can get hard, and I totally understand it. Sometimes you have to take time off to address your mental health. There's nothing wrong with mental health days the same way that you can take sick days. I encourage that all the time. If you feel like you're burning out, that is an occupational health hazard. You take that time. You've deserved it. You don't need a sore throat to call out. If you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling anxious or depressed, take that time. You lay in bed, you take a bath, you do whatever you need to come back. And if you need 2 days, you take 2 days. Mental health is incredibly important, and you should be supported every step of the way in that, especially if it's caused by your work. Do not feel guilty about supporting that. keep a list of self-care topics if you're super busy. I think that this is really helpful. I'm actually going to build a mindful routine checklist for you guys. It's going to be in my newsletter. If you guys are interested, sign up. Having a physical thing that you can look at and check off and see your options on there. It's a great resource for you when you're just not really feeling it and you're stuck. And honestly, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, you might not have the capacity to really think about your options. Another way to get it done is just put it on your to-do list. I don't know about you, but if it's on my to-do list, it gets done. And self-care should definitely be at the priority to you guys. And also, reframe it that you need to put yourself first. This should be a priority for you. It doesn't matter what else needs to be done. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You will burn out, and then, it's game over. It's going to take much longer for you to recover from that. So just know, if you're burnt out, you're not alone. So many other nurses were. I was super burnt out, 62%. That's a huge number. There's tons of resources and support systems out there. This podcast will always be a safe space, and I'll be introducing self-care topics and ideas for you guys, as well as ways for you to support your mental health. There's also the National Institute of Mental Health that has different options for you as well, and ideas to support you. You can also check your insurance to see what ideas they have. They might have counseling services or yoga classes, different ideas for reimbursement for, I know my ski pass got reimbursed one year. So definitely look into that. There's also a really good platform called Headspace for meditation. I invite you to check out books from your local library. And if you don't have time, they have audiobooks too. You can just throw that puppy on in the car. So definitely look at your library as a source. And if you feel like you need additional support, seek out counseling. Sometimes we just need a professional, and there's no shame in that. We're healthcare workers. We should know the importance of maintaining our health. If you're looking for a group setting, definitely join a local gym, join a local chapter, anything like that, like rock climbing, an aerial gym, a local hiking gym, a local foraging class. I know for a while there were local library classes that I was going into because I was new in town. So just find your people and find a way to connect. There's also a Reddit page for nurses, or Reddit pages in general are really great ways to find communities. There's mental health pages. There's one for freelance writers. So if you feel like you need that anonymous support, Reddit is another great place. I will say the nursing page is pretty depressing. There's a lot of burnt out nurses on there, so use that with caution. It's a pretty burnt out, bitter place. One of the best ways that you can support yourself is creating a self-care plan. Like I said, I'm going to send one out in my newsletter this week as a template. And you can monitor your water, your mood, and create space for you to write your personal ideas down. It makes self-care easy, approachable, and puts it on the forefront of your mind. So I would be happy to support you guys in your journey with that. That's about it for today. Just remember that burnout, anxiety, and depression are on the rise, and your healthcare facility is one of the leading causes. So unfortunately, we really need to safeguard ourselves, advocate for ourselves, and do what we can to protect ourselves from our healthcare facilities, because they do not care about our mental health. If they did, burnout would not be on the rise. So as always, this podcast is a safe space for all healthcare workers to explore their options. And remember, you are valuable as a person, and you're so much more than just a nurse. You're a person that deserves to take the time to nurture and support themselves. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me on the Nursing Now podcast. My name is Janelle McSwig, and I look forward to connecting with you guys on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you.